My name's Michael. I'm 29 years old, living in Denver, Colorado. If you've ever had your whole world turned upside down by just one text message, then maybe you'll understand a little bit of what I went through. By the end of this story, you'll see how one sentence, just a handful of words glowing on a phone screen, can destroy years of love, trust, and comfort in a single second. But let me take you back to before it all fell apart. I've always been kind of a creature of habit. Every morning, I'd wake up around 6:45. The first thing I did wasn't check my phone, wasn't scroll through social media. It was text her. "Good morning, love." That was our thing. She'd usually reply within minutes, a little sleepy morning babe with a smiley face. Those small rituals are what make love feel alive, you know, the consistency, the unspoken promises. We had been together for almost 4 years. Her name was Emily. She had this way of laughing where she'd tilt her head back slightly, cover her mouth like she was embarrassed, but her eyes would shine. I used to tell her she looked prettier when she laughed than when she posed for pictures. Our relationship wasn't perfect. No one's is. But it felt real. We'd argue over silly things, like which Netflix show to start next, or whether pineapple belongs on pizza. It doesn't, and I will die on that hill. But beneath the little spats, there was always this solid undercurrent of trust. Or at least, that's what I believed. My daily routine became intertwined with her existence. Lunch breaks at work, I'd FaceTime her for 10 minutes, even if we just talked about nothing. Grocery shopping, I'd send her a picture asking, "This pasta sauce or that one?" Nights were our favourite, though. We'd sit in my apartment, take-out containers on the coffee table, some random sitcom playing in the background, and her feet tucked under my leg because she always said she got cold. It felt like home, and maybe that's why the cracks forming were invisible to me. Because when something feels like home, you stop checking for leaks in the roof. You just assume the foundation will hold. I should have noticed the little changes. The way her phone was suddenly always flipped face down. How "I'm tired" became her most common excuse to cut conversations short. How she started cancelling plans, saying work was overwhelming, even though she used to beg me for more date nights. But love makes you blind. Or maybe it makes you hopeful. I told myself it was just a phase. Stress, burnout. I kept waiting for her to come back to me fully, like she used to. Then came that day. It was a Wednesday. I remember because I had this boring meeting at work where all I could think about was picking up tacos from our favourite place later. I texted her, "Taco night." No reply. Hours passed. My stomach twisted a little, but I told myself not to overthink. Around 8:30 that night, my phone buzzed. I smiled, thinking it was her saying she was finally free. But when I opened it, the message wasn't what I expected. It wasn't playful. It wasn't tired. It was cold. "Michael, we need to stop. Please don't call. I'm sorry." 9 words. Just 9 words. I sat there staring at the screen, reading it over and over, like maybe the letters would rearrange themselves if I blinked enough. My tacos sat untouched. My hands shook so badly I dropped my phone once. My first thought wasn't even anger. It was confusion. Like, what do you mean stop? Stop what? Loving each other. Being us. That night, I couldn't sleep. I just lay there in the dark, my phone clutched in my hand, rereading the same sentence until my eyes burned. The hum of the fridge, the faint city noise outside, the glow of the street lamp through the blinds. It all felt sharper, louder, heavier, like the whole world was pressing down on me. And that's how it started. My story, my heartbreak, my unraveling, all from one text that ended everything. The next morning, I woke up with my phone still in my hand. My neck was stiff, my eyes felt swollen, and for a second, I forgot what had happened. You know that brief moment when you wake up and the world feels normal, like your brain hasn't caught up to the heartbreak yet. Yeah, I had that, until I looked down at the screen and saw her message again. Michael, we need to stop. Please don't call. I'm sorry it hit me all over again. My thumb hovered over her name in my contacts. I wanted to call so badly. Just hear her voice, hear her explain, hear her say it was a mistake, a misunderstanding, anything but what it looked like. But those 4 words, please don't call, held me back, and for the first time in years, I didn't text her good morning. My routine was broken. I dragged myself out of bed, made coffee the way I always did, 2 sugars, splash of cream, but it didn't taste right. Maybe it was my tongue, maybe it was my heart. Everything felt bitter. Normally, I'd sip while scrolling through the news, send Emily a meme, maybe talk about plans for the weekend. But my phone stayed silent. Work that day was torture. I sat at my desk, staring at spreadsheets, pretending to focus, while my brain kept replaying the last 4 years on loop. Our first date at that tiny Italian place downtown. The time she surprised me with tickets to the Broncos game. Her head on my chest when she fell asleep during movies. Every memory hit like a punch to the gut. By lunch, I caved. I texted her once, Emily, please just tell me why. No reply. Hours crawled by. I kept checking my phone every 2 minutes, convincing myself maybe I missed the buzz. But nothing came. That night, I went to her apartment. I don't even know what I was expecting. Maybe she'd open the door, cry, hug me, and we'd figure it out. But she didn't even answer. Lights off, curtains closed. My knuckles hurt from knocking too hard. I stood there in the hallway, people passing by, giving me those looks like they knew what was going on. I felt pathetic. When I got back to my car, I just sat there, gripping the steering wheel. Tears came hard, the kind where you can't even breathe. I screamed once, loud enough that it scared me. Because how could someone who said they loved you just disappear overnight? How do you go from planning trips together, talking about kids' names, to this? A text message. That week was a blur. I stopped shaving, stopped cooking. Dinner was takeout containers, piling up on the counter. I'd fall asleep at 3 a.m. with my laptop still glowing, YouTube videos running in the background, just so the silence wouldn't crush me. But the worst part wasn't the loneliness. It was the questions. The endless, gnawing questions. Was it me? Did I do something wrong? Was there someone else? Why couldn't she at least tell me to my face? I checked her social media obsessively. Nothing. Like she vanished. The Emily I knew, the Emily who used to send me goofy selfies and tag me in dog videos, was just gone. And that's when it hit me. Maybe I never really knew her as well as I thought. Maybe the Emily in my head was someone I created, someone I needed her to be. But when that realization came, so did the anger. The sadness was still there, raw and heavy, but now it had company. A burning, ugly anger that made me clench my jaw so hard I thought my teeth would crack. Because love isn't supposed to end like this. Not with a text. Not with silence. Anger changes you. It gives you a kind of energy you don't want, but can't turn off. That week, I went from crying in bed to pacing the floor, digging through memories like a detective searching for clues. I replayed every conversation, every late-night phone call, every dinner. Was there a moment I missed? Some sign she was pulling away? I remembered one night, about 2 months before she left, when she said she was working late. I offered to bring her dinner, and she snapped at me, almost defensive. Back then, I brushed it off. Now, it felt like a red flag I ignored. And then there was her phone. Emily was never secretive, but those last few weeks, I noticed she kept her phone face down. Even in the middle of dinner, if it buzzed, she'd flip it quick, like she didn't want me to see. At the time, I trusted her. Now, I hated myself for trusting so blindly. The questions ate me alive, and the silence from her was worse than any answer could have been. So, one night, I drove past her apartment again. I told myself I wasn't going to knock. I wasn't going to do anything stupid. I just needed to know if she was there. And that's when I saw it. A car parked out front. One I didn't recognize. Sleek, black, way too fancy for Emily's taste. The kind of car that screamed money. My chest went tight, like someone had kicked me straight in the ribs. I sat there in my old Chevy, staring at that car, waiting. And then the door opened. Emily stepped out, laughing, but she wasn't alone. A man followed behind her, tall, sharp suit, one of those perfect people who look like they belong in magazines. He carried her bag like it was the most natural thing in the world, like they'd done this 100 times. I swear my whole body froze. I couldn't even breathe. The girl I'd spent 4 years building a life with, the one who sent me good night texts every single evening, was standing there with him like I never existed. They didn't see me, or maybe they did, and they didn't care. She leaned into him, hand brushing his arm, and my stomach flipped. That night, I didn't sleep. My mind was racing with every possible scenario. Was this the reason she left? Was he the reason for the late nights, the secret smiles, the cold distance? But underneath the rage and heartbreak, something else crept in, a determination. I couldn't just let it end like this. If she thought she could vanish into someone else's world, rewrite the story we had, and erase me like a typo, she was wrong. This wasn't just heartbreak anymore. This was betrayal. And betrayal has a way of turning love into something darker. Betrayal changes you. It doesn't just hurt, it rewires your brain. The morning after I saw Emily with that man, I woke up in a haze. My body felt heavy, like I hadn't slept in weeks. I went through my routine on autopilot, brushed my teeth, shaved, poured myself a cup of coffee. But everything felt different. The coffee tasted bitter, my reflection in the mirror looked like a stranger, and even the air in my apartment felt heavier. I sat at my small kitchen table, staring at the steam rising from the mug. That's when it hit me. She wasn't coming back. Not this time. Not after that man. The pain made me restless. I couldn't sit still. I grabbed my jacket, stepped outside, and just started walking. No destination. Just walking. My sneakers pounded against the cracked sidewalks of our old neighborhood. Every corner carried a memory of her. The corner diner where she'd order pancakes at midnight. The bookstore where she pretended to read, but always ended up buying candles instead. The park bench where she first told me she loved me. And now all those places felt poisoned. I sat on that same bench for almost an hour, thinking. My chest burned with this mix of sadness and fury I couldn't name. That's when a thought formed. dangerous but clear. If she could replace me so easily, if she could laugh with someone else, like our years meant nothing, then maybe I needed to show her I wasn't just some chapter she could close. But what could I do? Confront her? Show up and yell? That would just make me look desperate, weak, number. If I was going to do something, it had to matter. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through our old messages, her voice notes, her photos. Every smile, every "I love you" now looked like a lie. And the more I scrolled, the colder I felt. Revenge. The word scared me, but it also gave me focus. It was like a fire in my chest that made me feel alive again. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at my desk with a notebook, pen in hand, writing down ideas, things I could do, ways I could make her regret walking away. I wasn't thinking straight, but I knew one thing. I couldn't just fade into the background of her new life. She had rewritten our story without me. Now, I was going to write the ending. I spent nights making plans that made no sense on paper. Revenge fantasies that played out like cheap movies in my head. I pictured dramatic confrontations, viral posts that would expose her, clever ways to humiliate him. Every one of those scenarios felt good for a second, like a sugar rush, then left me emptier than before. The next morning, my hands were steady enough to pour coffee without spilling. That was the first tiny victory. I'd wake up, make coffee black, no sugar, no cream, and sit at the kitchen table with the same cracked mug I'd had since college. The ritual was trivial, but rituals matter. They keep you human when everything else wants to turn you into a weapon. I didn't go the Hollywood route. No public shaming, no social media explosions. I thought about it, of course, typing furiously into a phone at 2 a.m, hitting send and watching a life crumble. But I also knew what that would have turned me into, someone who destroys because he can't bear being hurt. I didn't want to trade my soul for a moment of satisfaction. I wanted something that lasted. So I chose the boring, hard route. I reclaimed my life. First, I stopped stalking. That's the ugly truth. After a breakup like that, the easiest drug is information. I unfollowed her on every platform. I deleted old photos from my phone. I deleted the playlist we'd made for long drives. I put away the mug with the stupid heart sticker she'd given me on our second anniversary. Tiny physical severances, but they added up. Each one felt like a small price for peace. Then I did something that surprised even me. I called my sister. We hadn't spoken in weeks. Embarrassment and pride kept me quiet. I talked until my voice cracked. I said the stupidest things, the rawest things. She didn't say, "Get her back," or "Show her who's boss." She said, "Come home for Sunday dinner." Not to fix me, just to remind me that some things are steady. Work became my anchor, not as punishment, but as a way to build meaning again. I took on projects that mattered, not the hollow kind that only look good on a resume. I mentored a junior designer and actually listened when she told me about her kid's recital. I learned to laugh without waiting for my phone to buzz. My days filled up with small, honest tasks, responding to emails, watering a plant on my windowsill, actually folding laundry instead of tossing it on the chair. A month after the text, I ran into Emily at the corner farmer's market. I froze. She looked lighter, like someone had removed a guillotine she'd been wearing for years. Her hair was shorter. She smiled a sad, apologetic smile that didn't reach her eyes. There were 100 things I could have said. I wanted to yell, to ask how she could erase years with 9 words, to remind her of the nights I'd sat up holding the couch while she slept. Instead, I nodded and kept walking. That is the strangest part of healing, the power to do nothing. A few weeks later, I drafted a message. I typed it, erased it, typed it again. For a second, I pictured sending it and feeling vindicated. But what I actually needed to do wasn't tell her how wrong she'd been. It wasn't to show her the man she lost. It was to tell myself the truth I'd been avoiding, that my life wasn't defined by her decision to leave it. So I wrote one sentence, not to her, but to myself, and then I deleted it after reading it aloud. Thank you for the part of my life you helped build. I won't let the rest be defined by how it ended. Then I walked to the river that evening, the city lights reflecting in the slow water. I held the little silver ring she'd given me, cheap, sentimental, now just metal, and tossed it into the current. It made a small splash, then disappeared. I didn't feel anger then. I felt release. The gesture was symbolic and stupid, and exactly what I needed. Months passed. The ache dulled into a steady background hum. I started seeing a therapist, someone to help me untangle the loop of questions that kept playing in my head. I journaled. I ran. I learned to enjoy tacos alone again, without thinking she should be there. I dated, awkwardly, like a teenager, and discovered that loneliness doesn't always equal longing. People ask if I forgave her. I don't know if forgiveness is a single moment. Maybe it's a series of choices. Choosing not to be bitter, choosing to build, choosing to be present. What I do know is this. I stopped letting that text be the narrator of my life. One evening, a year later, I sat on my couch with a different kind of glow. The soft, steady kind that comes from sleep and good work, and the knowledge that you survived something that should have crushed you. My phone buzzed. A new message. I looked at the screen. It was a promo for tacos from a place I'd never tried. I smiled, tapped to open it, and for the first time in a long time, the notification didn't make my heart race. It was just a sound, a small, ordinary thing. Life, continuing. If you ask me whether the text really ended everything, well, it ended a chapter, a dream, a version of myself. But endings are not always annihilations. Some endings are the first line of a story you didn't know you had the courage to write. So, if you're listening and you've been crushed by 9 words or 9 months of silence, hear this. You won't be defined by the message you didn't expect. You'll be defined by how you stand after you read it.